Hoya tang zu jibin ka do ba. Samba jang samba de jibi se tela lo do se taba jibin la jang se tela ba. Da tambo la taba de lo ngo zo te jibi ta ni te jibi ta de do ngai de kunyo ko samba da. Yo la junyi ko samba ni yo la junyi ko samba ni je. Da de ne de ngai de kunyo ko samba de de ne de ji to ma so do ba da. De ngai ko ba mo ni je. 다 군요 그 요래 상바들라 너무 같이 주 레소 비추 치보와 지와는 비추 말বে
Bless
송제
Bless
다 너무 같이 주다 너무 고소와 너무 비추 너무 비 네메 말বে 오데는 로소와 되네 다 치보와 지와는 비추들라 치보와 지와는 비추들라 치세 네 치세 네. 나지 집어 저번에 비추들라 나 말봐 치제 치세 저거는 두바 신내 받은 줄로 되는 짓이 예상자수로 어떻게 지주자는 말이야.
Bless So once again, we're looking at Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, and specifically the section on training the mind in the stage of the path shared in common with beings of medium capacity. When we look at that outline of that entire section, we can break it down into 4 categories. First category is the mental training. A second category is the measure of the determination to be free, or the measure of one's renunciation. The third category, dispelling misconceptions. And then the fourth category is ascertaining the nature of the path leading to liberation. So when we get to the first category, which is the mental training, we find that there are 2 categories under the mental training. Looking at it, hold on 1 second. Let me just get to where we are. Okay, so 2 categories of the mental training. Reflection on the truth of suffering in terms of origin, and then reflection on the truth of suffering from the viewpoint of the 12 links of dependent origination. So looking at that, when we get to the first category, reflection on suffering and its origin, we have 2 categories: reflection on the truth of suffering, the faults of cyclic existence, and then reflection on the process of cyclic existence in terms of origin. When we get through first the section on the method for developing the mind intent on liberation, once we get through that section and we go through the actual meditation on suffering section. Actually, let me back up. So when we look at we go back to the reflection on the truth of suffering, the faults of cyclic existence. I apologize, I missed a point in the outline. There are 2 categories. First, showing the significance of the Buddha's asserting the truth of suffering is the first among the 4 Noble Truths. And then the second category, which is the actual meditation on suffering. The actual meditation on suffering, we find those categories of divided into the suffering, the 3 types of suffering, the 6 types of suffering, and the 8 types of suffering. So when we go through the section on all the different types of suffering, then we get to the actual section on origin. And that is the process of cyclic existence in terms of origin. Under that category, there are 3 categories. First, how the afflictions arise. Second, how you thereby accumulate karma. And then third category of how you die and are reborn. So the first category, which is how the afflictions arise, we have 4 categories. First, identifying the afflictions. Second, the order in which they arise. Third, the causes of the afflictions. And then fourth, the faults of the afflictions. So those are the categories that deal with how the afflictions arise. And then the next category then is how you thereby accumulate karma. And then we first have identifying the karma that you accumulate, and then the second category of how you actually accumulate that karma. So those are the 2 categories in that section. And then you get to how you die and are reborn. And there are 5 categories under how you die and are reborn. So the causes of death, the mind at death, where the heat gathers, how you reach the intermediate state, and then how you, after death, and then how you actually take a rebirth. So those are the 5 categories that deal with how you die and are reborn. So that's where we're going to begin. So Rinpoche will tell me what the page is. It's 307 in English, where the how you die and are reborn. Is there any way somebody could get me a glass of water? That'd be fantastic. Water's great. Thank you. Apologize. Lesser. Okay. So page 307, we'll be starting on the English, how you die and are reborn, and then Tibetan, we're on page 241. Bless you.
Shene badun rulo to the lari chimbo Nija Juju Shejire Nija Juju Shejik Chidandu Jeba Shene badun rulos what the ne was Angatenja.
So Rinpoche said we're actually on how you reach the intermediate state after death. So that's on page 309 in the English. And 244 in the Tibetan.
Shene what the Badul Joalem Badul Shene Badul Rulula and what the Linjaji what is Haji Juji or Juji Sajano Lula, Guamanda Juju Drava, Guamanda Juju, and what the Haji Juji Jigdua.
Okay.
Juju Shene Badul Rulu Nes, Tambo to Tamil Leonde Shene Badul Rulu ne Hashi Batari Shene Badul Rulu ne Hashi Batara. Nashi Kane Pu Shu Tene Ne Bamashiba Sandi Tume Jindu Shiwatan Badun Rutes what the Jujugan Tambutre Shene Badun Rulu Hashi Batara Nashi Kane Poas Nashi the what the Tumal Nisan Judu what the Vision Hingat Mandra should know what the Nashi Kane Pu Naji Kana Pota, Magawa Saba Sagan Jimba in a Duna Duni Hikabat Yungores, Goasagan in a man at Dune, Hikabat Dune, and Tamal Dread Hikat Ponocres, and what the Nazu sent on Zubi in the Kakachan Wajrova. And what the Jujunan Tombate, Hashiba Tara, Naji Kana Pu Shootene, Naji Kana Pu Shootene. Bamachi Bas and then Sandy Tomasian those Sandy Tomas and also Nicola Jazio, this the Masona Tongue, the Duyan Sandy Tomasian those Shiwatan, Paduro Dunares, Dunya, Shiwatan, and the Padugulu Dunares, Shiwatan, Chawasana, Mauba, Shiwasan Deba, Shiwatan.
Okay, so we're on the section number 4, how you reach the intermediate state after death, page 309. And Jayan Sheba divides this section into 14 different categories. So the first category is this first sentence in the English. As the consciousness leaves from the spot, as just explained, you die and reach the intermediate state immediately, just as one arm of a balancing scale tips up when the other arm tips down. So as the consciousness leaves from that spot, as just explained, those who are currently engaged in non-virtue, consciousness leaves the body coming down from the upper parts, and then if one is currently cultivating virtue, the opposite happens. The consciousness ascends from the lower parts. So that's what it means by as just explained. So this is the first category, and it says you die and reach the intermediate state immediately, just as one arm of a balancing scale tips when the other tips down. So when it's the reaction that takes place, if this is the case, you immediately reach that intermediate state, just as if one side of a scale tips one way or another, there's a reaction on the other side, and it automatically takes place. Likewise, when the consciousness leaves, then you are actually die from the perspective of consciousness leaving. Then you reach that intermediate state. So it's saying it's the next thing that happens because of the consciousness leaving.
What the 주juk 나는 어디 담부들에 다 가데 셔와당 바두르바 두냐레스 담부들에 대서도와 셔와당 바두르바 두냐레스 셔와 안에 대세당 류니 카카 차바던 라서 바두르바 두냐레스 변화 뜻이도.
So the meaning of this first category of Jayan Sheva's outline is that when you die, the consciousness separates from the body, and when that takes place, at that point in time, one reaches the intermediate state. So when that consciousness leaves and there's the separation of body and consciousness, then one is abiding intermediate state or bardo. So that's the meaning of that first category.
Tani badlo what padu jiag jud kararesena what jud legdwa. Niba padu jiag june lula chaba jeba dans. Padu jiag jud susu zobul chaba yorota. Chaba jeba dan no trubala gayu ne yonsu goba dan gimag gangi gimag garungi le de niba tala tene sosa. 다 받은 루비 줘도 와도 수수료라 차바 드레스 차바다 뭐 줘발라 가와다 뭐 수수 마시 공로 와데 네 가를 가버여 봐이나 줘발라 가유 네 용수 고바다 줘발라 가유 바차 고바 바차 잡아 그뭐 가롱게 레데니 부틀라테네 안 받은 루비 줘드레스 그뭐 가롱게 레 Lete nibu tala tene wate padu tu chuyungure padu tu rebure padu jut teres wate niba tere.
The next section deals with the causes of the intermediate state. So that's number 2 in the outline of 14. So it says, as to its causes, the intermediate state is contingent upon having become attached to your body and being filled with delight in your previous worldly activities, and karma, whether virtuous or non-virtuous. So there are 2 things necessary in order for the intermediate state to be created. So the intermediate state is caused by A, having become attached to your body. Then the Rinpoche, Kapiyung so gupa.
Padu june
Lula
chaba jeba tang trubala gayus trubala gayung lekha kare ane kashi inchi shebala gagre kashi lekha ramana mabijal gabu yorota trubala gayus marbe yonsu goba trubala gay pasha jaba tang gimegi le de nibula tene and padu lu jut teres jutala tene and padu lu ngres.
So it says I just asked Rinpoche, you delight in your previous worldly activities. So whatever you really liked in your lifetime, you start to think about. So you become attached to your body, and then the things that you like. So Rinpoche said if you really liked studying English, for instance, you start to delight in that, or other things that you were interested in this lifetime. So you begin to feel that this delight is kind of like a liking, really, really like these things that you've done. So you become attached to your body, and then you think how to have a great amount of joy in thinking about the things that you were involved with in this life. And then karma, whether virtuous or non-virtuous.
That's Sumba Dene, Badu Dayang, Mila Subi, Ombuna Tsawang, Roa Gantu Jeban Ju Di, Luji, Naba Jenji, Ne Jawa Shema, Lanji, Batu, Min Lai, Minter, Tuba Majin, Lujang, Zuchu Demba Jinto, Tuba Mentos. Demba Tuba Mento, Zule Jang, Hondu Siju Shatu Jen, Tenichi Hondo to G. Geshe Penjeto, Retun Hami Tabetu, Leju Zuju Shudan, Ombukuzon Tome Jo, Ombukuzon Madutan Tazao She, Badu Retun Gumba Le Shon Yu, Hai Mi Jundan Jai Tong La, Roa Ganyi Badu Truna, Tene Jewajen to do the Meba, Jewajen do the Meba Summe, Gunli to Duba Shedos, the Batu Sumba.
Okay.
Badu Ten, what the Badu Ten, Takate Ten, but Badu Ten, Maljagan Badu, May Badu in Bahina, and Badu to what they. Jiwashima may Badu Rabajus, Zunian Rabashi. What do you say you shall do, yes? Mandabujus, Mandabo, Haljiba in a Landrabo, Newan Jakin, and the Newan Drabo, Edal Jakin, Edan Drabo, Tonuji to Andrabus, Tandrabo. What the lady at that? Badu,
the zoo drabo.
On Zoo, what they may Badu in a Mandabo. Hai Badu in a Landrabo.
Oh, okay.
And then Nasun Badu in a Nasun Rabin, said Badu Dayan, Mila Suba, Ombu Talas, and the Badu Dayan make Ombula Suba Tamatan Yermadu, Ombu Matan Yermaris, Ombu Guntan to make juice. Badu Ombu Guntan Yaris, and what the Gabandroba in the Redan Chat and Samal Tuba Yermaris, Nasu light in the Rabin said, light at the Gaban in the road, the Naji. What the Badu the Retan Chat and Chutan Tugu Samarta, Gaba in the Rogas, Kuru, San Kalkuzun, then Rogas. Badu they Mila Subo, Ombu Tawas, Ombu Kuntans, Ombu Matan Yomaris, Min Sharatan, the Kamasha Jutan Yosomare, Ombu Kunsan Res, Ombu Kunsan, Roa Ganto, Ombu Kunsan Res, Roa Ganto Juati. Luji Naba Jens, Rock on the May Melchiba in a May Mandabo, Dendrul Jena Dendrul Rabo, Nandul Jena Nandul Rabu, Joa Malajibato, Main High Meter Tuba Magins, Joa Malajibato, what the main High Meter of Tuba Yomaris, Tuba Magin, Luji Zutu, the Debajento. Tuba Mentos, Luigi Zutu again the Satan Rodan Chagal Rota. Then I know about the Kazakan Rose, Taco. The Satan Chat to Tuba is a Marita. Lady Zutu should not dance. Ombukuns on two major Ombukuns and Ombamatan Yomares, Tuba Mendos, the Takun don't do it, John Draw. Madutan Zazavos, that may Badu just as one. Me Badu Jisabaina, and the Duma, the Melchigres, Madutan Tezavos, She Badu retune Batan Gomba Leshon, Badu Tasu Tongresana, Badu Kunus Tongres, Badu Kunu retune, Lai Badu Tongre, Me Badu Tongre, and Mwashi you can do Tongres. Okay. On Retun Hami Tabitons, Badu Retun Batan, Gombal Shon Yu, Retun Basan May Badu so May Napas Tongres, Hami Tabitons with Moshi to what the Badu Tongres, Lamita, Lai Mei Juan Dong Zhe Tong Las, Rua Gang Yin Bi Badu De Yang, Tene Jiwa Yin Do Du De Me Ba, Mei Badu Yina, Ne Mei Jiwa Lega De Mei, Tene Du Ma Res, Du De Me Ba, Song Me Sa, Gun Di Le Du Ba Yang Xie Dos, Gun Di Le Wa De, Mei Ba Si Jisa Na, Mei Jiwa Ma Le Ba Jiang, Jiwa Yin Da Le Ba Tene Song Yo Res, Jidana Dugu, Tene Ne Ba Le Sa Kos, 어때 모두든 제가 운주로 그거데 매 봐도 제사도 어때 멜치그레데 누구 말해서로 군들로 어때 누구 요아레스 매 봐도데 매 봐도 제사도 어때 봐도 돼야자 살제야 내 손제야 되는 거
제 투구도.
제야 요아레스 군주 당도 군을 주서 누바야 셰도 제드나 누구 되네 봐야 레사고스 바두도 매 바두이나 바두도네 야 바두 현달로네 바두 레사네 저와 현달네 그래스 군주 당주에 대해서 좀
바로 라 레사 투구도에.
사거자
Okay. Bardo Lesa, and then J, the Bardo Jagadu. Okay. Okay, so now we're at number 3. Furthermore, the being of the intermediate state possesses a complete set of sensory faculties, such as eyes, as well as the form of the body it will have in the realm in which it will be reborn. Until it takes rebirth, its vision is unimpeded, like divine vision, a type of superknowledge, and its body as well is unimpeded, as though it had miraculous powers. In the intermediate state, there are not incomplete sensory faculties, so it's not a characteristic of the bardo. The sensory faculties are complete. So it says such as eyes. As well as the form of the body it will have in the realm in which it will be reborn. So if one is going to be reborn in the human realm, then he or she will have an intermediate state human body. If one is going to be born in the animal realm, then they'll have an animal body. In the hell realm, they'll have a hell body. In the God's realm, they'll have a God's body. So one takes on the form that he or she, or it, if you will be born into in the next life. And everything that is seen by that being, because it says the vision is unimpeded, is what he or she or it will experience in the next rebirth, meaning one won't see all the other realms. One will only see beings from the realm that one is going to be born into, so of the same type. So I think it's literally of the same type. Those are the only beings that can be seen by the intermediate state being. And that intermediate state being has the ability to change in form because during the intermediate state, that being is accumulating karma. So it's possible then for them to change while in the intermediate state to another realm. But if that change takes place in the intermediate state, then that being takes on the form of the realm that they are going to be born into, because there are imprints in this the intermediate state being has, and he or she is collecting karma in the intermediate state. So the potential is there for a change to take place. But once it takes place, there's a complete transition from, so for instance, if it was a human being in going to change into a hell being, there's a complete transformation into that hell being, and then at that point, he or she, or it, if you will, only experiences beings of the same type. That's what is meant by as well as the form of the body it will have in the realm into which it will be reborn. But that form can change while that being's in the intermediate state. But in no point in time is there a kind of mix of the realms, if you will. There's always one form, and it's the form that being at that point in the intermediate state, according to their predispositions, at that moment will be born into. And again, that can change, but it's at that point what they would be born into if there was no other occurrence or no other predisposition arose to change that next life and form. So that's what is meant, and it says, and also the body, it says, is unimpeded. So Rinpoche said the body is similar to light. Light isn't obstructed, it isn't held back in any way. So likewise, this body is able to go through rocks, go through earth, go underwater. And if someone has, it says, as though it had miraculous powers, if someone had some of the magical powers that are able to be achieved through various concentrations and so forth, then one could go through a rock, one could go through earth, one could go through water. So one's body, if they had those powers, wouldn't be blocked in any way. It would be like the intermediate state being's body, which is compared to a light body that can travel anywhere unobstructed. And here it says the vision is unimpeded, and the body as well is unimpeded. It means there's nothing that can stop it, and it can travel very, very long distances depending on where it will be, he or she will be reborn. Diksung Rinpoche.
This one.
Yes,
What did you tata jibat lotere?
Zu.
And then what the tamakuro. And Jules, when you see you shadow jen, then chew Moroto, chi keji penje to return lamita beton, legge zuru shoot then, on the cousin to me, Jumodu than Tazao. She padure ton. Gomba le shon yu lai min chuen da te thong la roa kan chwa ti pa du chu na tene chwa jen do du de me ba du de mes de le son dos de le son mes de le son ba re de ba de du ba yes kun du le son yoras je me ba ba to me kun du le du ba yan she do che de na du go tene ne ba le sa go kun du le te yo de ba da ba du tene du ne Yeah, but legenda san chuba agenda land res chidana dugu tene neba lesa was what the but somba things amarba ta jeba dere jeba and ta jeba dere ta ngasu siba je amarba chisi pasi ngodu siba and chisi je siba je amarba siba je dere ta siba je ngodu siba chisi pasi Ne kare.
Ne chime. Indicated seek gange shime.
What did that and what the Jibate how do you know ones? How do you say about what the how do you say about what the anger surely take anger niba than do how do you say about ne? How do you say about ne? Siba jetes. Moi du sibat la jeores sibat jet chose na chene jo malamban pasis pasires chene jo malamban pasires sibat je nan tamje jo lambe keji tambat chisires jo lambe keji tambat chisires ti keji niba penjile ne keji niba penjine chisi ngaro bato moi du siba and chesi do the she keji tamade chesi do le son bes sebaje do teres
Okay.
sebaje de chose na moi seba ne jete chene jo malabane pasites sebaje na pasit tambeje pasit sebaje na tamberes tani ba chose na jo lambe keji tambote wate chesi jaures tab mel cheba dirul cheba ina ndanganul cheba ina chewal ne keji tombute Geshe Yagures, Geshe Dance, Geshe Keji Neba Penjete, and Shin Harubado, Modu Sebares, Modu Sebatanangaso, Modu Sebal Nedu Yogoro. The Keji Geshe Dan, the Keji Neba Penjene, Geshe Res, Geshe Keji Tama. Keji Tamin Harubado, the Modu Seba, Modu Seba Dan, Chi, Keji Tamane, Chisi Dunzule Sumbis, Chi Keji Tamado, Chisi is Zulu Sumbores, Siba Jeteres, Jiba de Lord, Siba Jeteredua, Modu Seba, Chisi Bazi, and then what is it? Jeto Saji Jiba Conterecha.
This giant Shiva Jipa.
Giant Jiba, what the Jeremichukun Tagarelu.
You know, the Sache, the Jipa.
Saji, what the Nolola, Siba Jet, Saji Jire.
Okay.
How do you see was a Tambalego?
Ale Ni Yure.
Saji Jiba, what the Siba Jet is, Siba Jet, and Tambal shows, and now, how do you see?
Okay.
Siba Jet. Shenejo Malambaduna, Pasiris, what the Borange in the Jejam.
So, number 3 also contains the quote from the Treasury of Knowledge by Vasubandhu. It says, "It has the form of which it will have in the prior time, which is the time prior to death in the next life. Beginning with the moment of birth in the next life, others of the same type or those with pure divine vision see it. It has miraculous karmic power in all sensory faculties. It is unimpeded. It does not change. It feeds on odors." So this is the point made in the Vasubandhu's text, the Abhidharmakosha. But Asanga disagrees in the Compendium of Knowledge with that point of that the beings do not change. And states that there can be a change in the intermediate state. So it says Vasubandhu means that the being of the intermediate state can be seen by beings there who are of its own type and by persons who have used meditation to attain the impeccable divine vision. He also claims that once you reach the intermediate state for a certain rebirth, you will not change to the intermediate form of any other rebirth. However, the Compendium of Knowledge holds that such changes do occur. So the Asanga's Compendium of Knowledge states that there are changes. One can change types when in the intermediate state. And so that's all number 3. Number 4 begins with this. As for the term prior time, the Treasury of Knowledge refers to 4 states. From death until taking rebirth is the intermediate state. The first moment of taking birth is the birth state, and from the second moment of life up to the last moment of death is the state of the prior time, and the last moment of death is the death state. So these are called the 4 existences, or the 4 states. 4 existences, Sipaji. 4 states is good. 4 existences. So we have from death until taking birth is the intermediate state, or the bardo. So after death until there's a birth, and then the first moment of taking birth, at that moment is the birth state, and then the second moment up to the last moment of death is the prior time. The actual life itself is the prior time, and then the last moment of death is called the death state. That's the those are the 4 existences, or 4 states. And I read the state of the I think that Rinpoche read the last line. The state of the prior time is prior in relation to the death state and the next rebirth of the being of the intermediate state. So I just want to see where he starts now, but I don't believe he read that last sentence. Dixon Rinpoche.
what the Pasi then Natu May Joalemoro, Keji Tomboto what the Chesides, Marba, Keji Neba Pension, she Narupato, Modus Sibores, Tanangato Modus Ned Marba, Gemma Shedu du Tamale Chesi Jungurota, Cheserabat Samu, what the Chesil Jagures, what the Jebat Timbre.
So now we have a human existence. So before we took birth into this human existence, we were in an intermediate state. So that was a state of our existence, or an existence. So during the intermediate state, the first moment that we were born is the birth state for us, and then we're currently abiding in that third category, which is the second moment up till the last moment of death. So we're currently in that, and then when we actually die, that and that last moment, that will be called the death state for us. So this is these are the various existences and how we went through them, and are going went through and are going through them. So the first two we've went through. The last two we're going through. Digsum Rinpoche.
Ngaba delwa choba jindo ngaba tazu sadre ngaba watne.
It is that extra sense.
Padu tuwate jong hami luen rabu yogares kajik. Jong hami luen rabu yogares. Ane wate jowa shimi luen jense pucha tongdu le ane shika jong hami luen rabu re shika jowa shimi luen rabu res. Kaji jiga dalagun duos. Wate jenim jin rigum duosung de. Tazu jowa lambi tuji chisi la tubi jowa lambi tuji chisi la tubi. 하루 임발라 tel 트네 저 하미 르지 이순도 바단스 저 하미 르기 이젠다 보여레스 바도 더 바단스 야 심이 이젠수 셰바 토네스 바시데 저 심하게 네카 이도 카둔라고 손바도 바자 통고로와 다그 갈라고 그래서는 시가데 저 함이 이제래 시가데 저 심이 이제래스 로그도세 what the truth there is 네 하마 셰다 심마 심이 르지 나제 되바네 코나다 가야 매베사 네 시가데 함이 르기 이제 시가 심이 르 이제 소아들 코나다 문두스 가주된지도 문두스 가야 매베 주다 코나오스 제르미 가근도다 시밀료기 이젠 자고르마도 함이 료지 이젠 자자들 공유 말레스 간주된주노 공유 말레스 주다보 코나오스 what 나버레.
So number 5, the Kabaka Rinpoche numbers.
코나오스 what
okay.
주다 코나오스.
Nejor sa yomare. Okay. Okay. So number 5 is a debate takes place because there are some who have wrong assertions about the way in which the form, how the form is in the intermediate state. They say that half the time that one is there, you take on the body from the previous life, and half the time you take on the body of the next life. So they state that there's 2 forms that you take in the intermediate state, that of your last life and that of your future life. So Geshe Rinpoche negates that idea and states that there's nowhere that it can be found, that we don't find it in the Kangjur, we don't find it in the Tanjur. So these assertions have absolutely no merit, they have no basis. So it says, some claim mistakenly that the being of the intermediate state has the shape of the body from its previous life. There are also those who claim, in the view of Asanga's explanation of this being's physical shape in its next life, that it is in the image of the body from its former life for 3½ days, and in the image of the body it will possess in its next life for 3½ days. In the absence of any accurate sources, such assertions are simply fabrications. So Lama Tsongkhapa says, this is not in the Kangje, this is not in the Tanjur, so this is made up. This is not something that can be found to be true. The truth is that one takes on the form that he, she, or it will have in one's future life. And there will not be the form of a previous life.
That Druba didn't material do Druba, Druba did Druba, Druba as Genji Badu Saint Jusu Truaness, Genji Badu Saint Jusu Truas, or Delno Tree Chikan Udoya. Ne Druba ne. Nashi Menebi, Maji Lula, Deba Manjua, Naju should be Sar Sombes. Maji Lul, Nashi Tata Lul, Nadu Ramadun, Maji Lul Neo Marwata. Maji Lul, Darangasu Nashi Neo Mares. Nashi Menebi, Maji Lula, Deba Manjua, Maji Lula, Deba Manjua, Naju should be Sasombes. Le Gabu Yomaris, Gabu Mabade, Naju Shubisa, Sangagi, Naju Shubisa, le son de Sata. Maji Lud, Nashi, Majul Neo Marwati, Shetarota, Ruchasaro, Del Nashi Neo Marwa. Nashi Menebi, Majulula, Doba Majulula, and Doba Majua, Naju Shubi, Majulula, and the Susan Gato. Shisa du Pasi Rosa du, on what the Susu Roger Marbo, the Gabu Mabate, Naju should be Saluson, Rosa. Nashi Menebi, Shisagan wrote the Nashi Nea Marota, Nashi Menebi, Majulula, Deba Manjuma, Naju should be Sason base, Sanga Naju should be Saluson, Tabadu the Susu Shisagan Lutele, Gabu member. Gabajigo Maris, Nenju Salu Sundos.
That's it, okay. Ngapa, Jip
Or the Trubaro Truba.
So,
Pajilu, Tune, he Madovajo and Dobayan Tutasos, Majilu Rotorota, the Tune, he Mado and Dobayan Tutares, Gabajigo Mare, he Madovajo Maris, he Mado and Jose. Dobatis Locantia Tutares. What about the Trubadre?
So now we move on to number 6. It says here also is something that's clarified. The levels of yogic deed says that the being of the intermediate state does not desire its former body, since its consciousness does not remain there. So in Asanga's level of yogic deeds, it says that the consciousness isn't in the body any longer. So there isn't any yearning for it. So it doesn't remember it. There isn't any desire for it because it's not there. So hence the assertion that it becomes disturbed upon seeing its former body is also a fabrication. So there's this idea that there's a disturbance that's taking place for the being because it desires this former body, but it's not inhabiting it any longer. So it doesn't have this disturbance. So this is negated in the levels of yogic deeds. So we'll take a short break.
What the Disan Sagandawari was done to Gawadua to Shitagi, Gawachibris, the Gawa Monjus Marban Bonjo, and not to Chuji Eva Ina, Henda Tazin Waters, Barbuchi Shiba Ina, Henda Tazin Gawaya Buddhist.
The Tamayajus Shea
Sagam Monju Dozer, Monju, the Manji Don, the Man Monji, Don Penny Waters, Gawachi Saba Ina, Gawambonsa, Penny.
So these days is the time of Sakadawa, the month of Buddha. So because of that, it's called the time of increase. And what that means is that all of our virtues are multiplied by 100,000. So if we do one Om Mani Padme Hum mantra, that is increased by 100,000 times. If we do any kind of virtue, accumulate anything virtuous, then this becomes multiplied by 100,000 times. So this is the time of increase, so it's very good if we can accumulate virtue during this time.
Deba Manjua, Naju should be Sally Son Besa, and then Muj Shita Rodele, and then Nashi Yomares, Nashi Meza, and Wadel Gabaji Mares, Gaba Mebade, Naju should be Sally Sanga Sondus, Son Base, and then Muj Lutone, Ye Madawajo and Deba and Jutasos, Young Kashi Kebakashi, Muj Rod Tonsuna. And sell Majiba Yungres, Dobajidote, Yomar Jutares, Reda. Hajulu, Tone, Madewa Yomar Gabo Yomares, Jutasos, or Toba Jubare.
So, just going over number 6 again, and we find a point being made from a Sangha's level of yogic deeds. It says the levels of yogic deeds says that the being of the intermediate state does not desire its former body since its consciousness does not remain there. Hence the assertion that it becomes disturbed upon seeing its former body is also a fabrication. So we have some previous scholars who asserted that there was kind of an unpleasant feeling that the mind would have, the mental consciousness itself would have when it was separated from the body itself, so that and once it's separated, so it's separated and there's an unpleasant mental feeling. So there were scholars that asserted that, but the level of yogic deeds negates that idea and says that the consciousness that doesn't remain there, is not there, so there's no craving for it, there's no unpleasant feeling in the mind itself. Because now it is somewhere else. It has a different state that it is abiding in. So therefore, there isn't that attachment or unpleasant feeling in relation to the body.
That Dumba, Magoshi Basi ne, Shawa Napo, Temple Mena Homa Tabuosa, Nabu de Jimendua, Magoshi Basi de, Shawa Nabu Ragi what the Toulouse Sabat Nabur Hote, Shaw Nabonsa, Chenmo Mena Homa Tabosa, and the Nakuna Homa Juarez, Badu Homa Tendres, Magoshi Basine, Shaw Nabon, Chenmo Mena Homa Tabos, Chem Nahul Nabuji Tongro, what the Juarez, what Ta Gawashi Basi ne, Gawashi Basi, Dendri Basi ne, Nha Cabo, and the Kulan Nha Cabo or Cabo, Dayu Tang Jibi, Chemi and Hong, Chemel, what Nakala, Dawashas on what the Dawagi and Rabaji, what the legit Juarez. Dayu the Jibi, Chemi and Hong Tabo, so what about Dumbare?
So now we move on to number 7. It says the intermediate state appears to those who have cultivated non-virtue as like a black blanket or the pitch black darkness of night, while those who have cultivated virtue, while to those who have cultivated virtue, it is like a white cloth or a moonlit night. So here it's showing the distinction between being who's cultivated non-virtues experience in the intermediate state, and the being who's cultivated virtues experience in the intermediate state. So non-virtuous and virtuous beings experience in saying that the non-virtuous being is in a state of darkness, and then the virtuous being is in a place that has this wonderful light, kind of like a moonlit light, or that's very clean, very white, like a cloth. So very clean, like a white cloth.
Ta jeba denere jeba ran da ri tu ji ba du ta da rang ge jene jang tong ngo de ju ma do ri tu ji ba du ba du ko ri tu ba du tong ge me na me ba du tong ge ane tondu ina tondu ba du tong ge wa de tong ge no ko ron kan du jo le me jene tong ge tong su de ma ba tong su ane rāda rī tūñjī pādū tāng rāda rī tūñjī pādū nāpi sū tōngu rēs tadā tāng rāngi jēnē jāng tōngu sā kāndu jīwā lēmbā yīnā wātā jīwā lēng sā tēyā tōngu rēs kui tōngsū kī chabā tēngā tōngsū mē yīnā mē pādū tōngu rē kūrū jīwā shimā jīwā lēng jēnē tōngu rēs wātā shēgāndu wātā jīwā tāla.
So number 8 is you see beings of the intermediate state who are of the same type as yourself, as well as the place where you will be reborn. The Descent into the Womb Sutra describes the color differences in the intermediate state. So it's just you see beings of the intermediate state who are of the same type as yourself, as well as the place where each of you will be reborn. So here, when you're in the intermediate state, the beings that you see are of the same type, and the actual intermediate state itself, in the intermediate state itself, one will be able to see the actual environment in which he or she will be reborn. So what the environment will look like, where the birth will take place. That's it.
Ta goba de de padu khadu de do goba nga do juba les ni padu ne tondu me se bata bo dans ni padu tondu me se da ma do de mata ne shi shigatsi shiga ma se ba yo marbe o de da bo ores ni padu ne tondu me se bata bo dans tondu padu ne to ata bres to ata bo ane o de nga su taw mata na to yo ro de 드리지 나와지면로 도와다고요 아르카두 예다지 바도는 쳤다버레스 와라 언데빌 하다 메이 바도는 세다보 데빌 하다 메이 바도는 세다고요 와라 세 카두 서베이 말서보 세다보 단스 zukan 바도네 카부송데 카두지 셔바로스 zukan badu kabu yin sondu what kadu ge chaba badu kadu ge chaba res what badu kadu shigwa.
So then number 9 deals with the color differences in the intermediate state. So it says the Descent into the Womb Sutra describes the color differences in the intermediate state. For someone who is to be reborn as a hell being, the intermediate state is like a charred log. For one to be reborn as an animal, it is like smoke. For one to be reborn as hungry ghost, it's like water. For one to be reborn a deity of the desire realm and a human, it is like gold. For one to be reborn a deity of the form realm, it is white. So here it's stating the color differences in the intermediate state in relation to the beings themselves.
What Gubat about the Jiji, Tachuba dere Zumene Kankomani, so Zumene Kankomani, so Chewa na Padu Lasa Zumen man de Cantan, and Zukan just on a Padu artist, Zume but de Cantan. And de Cantan, Zukan, Zumel, Chesuna, Padu, Maris, Zumel, Padu, Maris, Zumel, Padu, Zumel, Zu, Marwa, Te Padu, on peut to me, Zu, or the Zumel, Padu, Maris, eta Zumen, a can't command you to Padu, la, Tinine, ane zukhan dan ane zume tu jenane kan tu shewa ti nashi ji phumbu ruji badu me to sa zukhan dan dekhan ne ya zume je sunu badu yo mares zume badu yo mar zume badu yo na zume zu yo gi ro zume zu yo mar badu yo mares
That's Ale.
Rung yo dos rung koma ne badu rung koma ne badu me be me sintele mashi be ne yada maji ane yada maji tsame ji badu me bando ba ya mari so sa me sintele mashi be yada meji tsame la badu me ba do ba ya mari so tsame sa kan to sul badu yo ma se ke kaji yo so wote dig mare so wote tsame sa no wote jiwala so no wote badu yo res ta badu me sen dig mare wote badu chubare.
So number 10, there is an intermediate state when you are born into the two lower realms, the desire and form realm. So among the three realms, the desire realm, the form realm, and the formless realm, when you are born into any... so it says, let me just read this first. There is an intermediate state when you are born into the two lower realms, the desire and form realms, from the formless realm. But vice versa, no, because the formless realm, there's no form, so there is no bardo. But when going from formless to form, then there is an actual intermediate state or bardo. So that's what the meaning of it is. If you go from into the formless realm, there's no intermediate state because there's no form, there's no body itself that's form. Well, there's body, but there's not a form body. So there's no form. But if leaving that into form, then there's an intermediate state where there is form. So now I'll read it. There is an intermediate state when you are born into the two lower realms, from the formless, the desire and form realms, from the formless realm. But when you are born into the formless realm, from the two lower realms, you attain the aggregates of a formless being immediately upon dying. There is no intermediate states. In the classic texts that are reliable sources, there is no description of any other special cases where there is no intermediate state. Consequently, with respect to the assertion that there is a direct transition upward to a heaven or downward to a hell, it is wrong to claim that there is no intermediate state. So there is no... the claim that there isn't an intermediate state in the case of those other examples is wrong, but there is no intermediate state in the case of the example of the form being who will be a formless realm being.
Ta juji ba o badu ndogro ta badu de kan les ndogro se na wa te rusu de she de ta juji ba lai badu ne chen do sa lai badu do chen de do kan ba lai badu de ya chen lu yan do de kan chi lai badu ne chen do me badu te ga do kan ba me badu te ga ro ane nyeba shebi nyeba sheba na ji badu ne me thudu she de shu tu de ro sung des da nge sung badu tu shu salma zu ro me do nyeba sheba na ji badu ne me thudu den de shu tu su ro sung de sa nge sung badu de ngud ma sal zu ro me do ro sung de nge sung ga la gomba rawo sawate shu zu ro sa de ni badu ta yeda badu ro badu sunga le hima ras jitum che gomba rawo sa zende le mata yeda ta tondo sun ra chenra te jin tu ro she do sa keju ni ge zende ga so mata yeda ta tondo ane tondo sun rāng ki chenrāwa tējīn tu rūhu sā Meche Makuru Kadu Druba in our Badu and Rusu Tendabu Hores. Yeda and Rusu Yeda Gane Tendabo, Tundu, Rusu what Tendabu Hores. Zendil Sonshas Zendil Mata Yeda Tundu Tundu Sun Rana Chetawa Gento. Roa Shetos. What did Jujiba, Jujiba.
The Yancha that's the Donda Suno Nang.
That's a good one.
Yeda, they made on Dendru.
That the Mata Yeda to Tundro, Mata Yeda to Tundro, Sombote, Rana Chetawa to Roa, Shetos. Mendanes and Roguyana, me Badu Tendabure, Yeda Ganes and Roguyana, Yeda Bad Tendabundure, Tundukanes and Roguyana, Tundiba Tendabundro, Nogres, Zundelish.
Then this sum kakare. Draw
Kakarota, Matan Tundu Kakarota. Tundu Kambatun, Jitu, Mayato Duro.
Okay. So
What the Kakasun does is the Shedo.
Juchi.
Yeah.
Juchi.
What the Juji.
Okay, so now we're so consequently, with respect to the assertion that there is a direct transition upward to a heaven or downward to a hell, it is to claim that there is no intermediate state. So now that's all in 10. Number 11, the Descent into the Womb Sutra says that the beings of the intermediate state who are to be reborn as deities ascend. Those to be reborn as humans move straight forward, and those to be reborn as wrongdoers move with their heads lowered and their eyes cast downward. It seems that this last part is meant to describe the intermediate states for the three miserable realms. The Treasury of Knowledge Auto Commentary says, the three, humans, hungry ghosts, and animals, each move in their own way. So I asked Rinpoche what that means, and it means that it says the humans move straight forward. So these three types of beings have different, they're all a different way of moving. Rinpoche said they're kakare, the Selbiomare. Dendru Yida Dang Me
Mata Yeda Tundu Sombo Padu to what the song Dabun Rotan Tendabures, me Badu Mandabundore, Yeda Dabundore, Tundu Badu, what this will do.
Okay, so they move in the way that they move as the type of being that they are. So they move like a hungry ghost if they're a hungry ghost. They move like an animal if they're an animal. They move in the way that a human would move if they're a human. So the human walks, so however the hungry ghost and the animal moves is how that being will move. So Rinpoche is saying they move differently because the humans walk, animals move differently than humans, and hungry ghosts move differently. So that is the meaning of that.
That Juni Badu Tsi Badu Tsi Kaziba de Tures, what the Tsi Badu Tsi Nasa Ji Jen Manienas Badul Jene Ji Jeola Jen Maniena Rita Tuna Shabu Dun Neger Dun Tulian Shigamanwa Badu says Shabu Dun but Shabu Dun Rita Tuna Sha Dun Dunes Badu says Shabu Dun res Jen Nane Neba Mentos Jen Nane Badu says Neba Yomares and the Shabuji Tula Shinaga you are, Nitula Shinaga you are, Keji Kamakashi Tula Badu Shinjoal and Rota. Chi Jemania was Shabu doing this, Badu says it. Jen and Neba Yomares and the Kamakashi Tula Badu Shina Joal and this. Shanyama Jil Shina Joal and Robert moving Neba Yomares. Manye nan rada to na sha dun na so, jenye nan ngaba me to sa. Jenye nan badu wote shabu dun debi ngaba yo mares, shabu ji to le jawalen de yo re. Chue ji to ne jawalen de kama kashi to ne jawalen dam na mo bre ngaba yo mares. Ngaba me to os. Jen manye jawalen jen manye na ya le jene sha dun cha dun chenje do ne jis. Padune what the Joan Jim Manina, Kazi Rimba Inaya, Dunta Dun Diggers, Dunta Dun Padule, Pado, Dunta Dun Shabukazi, Jitu Kazi,
Jiu
Juji Shiguro, what the Matu Matu Shene, what the Jiji Shigu to Masamba to Chumbi Jirota, Matu Batuina, what the Shigu to Masamba to what the Chumbi Missy Chumbi Jigre. Padu de what the Kutia Lambitin Manina, what the Shabu Dun she Dun Shabu Shiguba Digres, Dunta Dun 20 to Nages, Tipenji to Naba G. Jenebe, Tipenji Menesosa, Dunta Dun Penji Digmarisita. Run Koma Gane Jan, Tele Rinwa Mashibis. Koma kanju tenju tuzu nalu le padu wa de dunta dun le rion son modus ta kanju tenju tuzu modus ma shebe tele rion ne ban de ban mri sos padu do wa de dunta dun le laba padun de kan yus laba ina wa de ma re mate su ma mri sos wa de padu wa de kuni badre.
So now we move to number 12. With regards to lifespan, if a being of the intermediate state has not found the conditions for rebirth, it may remain for any length of time up to 7 days. Once it has found such conditions, its lifespan is not definitely 7 days. If it does not find the conditions for rebirth within 7 days, it assumes another body within the intermediate state. It may stay in the intermediate state from 1 to 7 weeks. However, as it is certainly will have found the conditions for rebirth within that time. As it certainly will have found the conditions for rebirth within that time, it stays no longer than that. Since the texts that are reliable sources do not describe a longer lifespan than this, the claim that the being of the intermediate state may stay longer is incorrect. So here it's a total of 49 days that one can potentially stay in the intermediate state. Lama Tsongkhapa is saying that none of the great texts, the Kangjur or the Tanjur, any of the Kangjur or any of the Tanjur have information that supports the idea that it can be longer than 49 days. So it's presented in those texts that within 49 days, 7 groups of 7, one will take on some type of a rebirth. So that's what the meaning of that is, and that's number 12.
What child was the Baturian or the child see Chene, Jemania, Retatuna, Dunta Duneso, Jenian and Abamedote, Juni Batresha, Chuson Batu, Jemania, Lu Jene, Sha Dunta Dunjibat Neji, Titunjido, Daniel Menesos, and Jun Comanane, Tele Rinwa, Mashibe, Tele Rinwa, Never Duban Marisos, or Tubat Chuson Badre. Manena said, and then my Chuson Badre, Chuson. Manena, Lugene, Dunta Dunjibat Neges.
Manena, Yang J.
What did Chuson Badreja?
And Kabarka.
What did Kasan Deredua? Manena, Lugene, Sha Dunta Dunjibat Neges. This to never G. Denebe. Ne depende do Meneso Run Koma Gane Jan Tele Rinwa Mashibe Tele Rinwa never do Marisos what about it
Meneso
Mani Nayans Shiba Mariso Shiba Juson Regis Juson
So 13. A being of the intermediate state that is to be reborn as a deity, for instance. Let me just see.
주송부터 많이 나 류제네 샤 둔차 둔 천지도 내제 대표지도 내가 지원에 배대냐베 대표지도 내가 머리수 중고마 간에 장들레지와 마시베 들레지와 내가 되번 머리수서 어디부터 주송래.
Okay, so this looks like it's split up. Then Zhong, the Jusong, Zhong Gong Magana Ne.
때 많이 나스. 저래 제 많이 나. 류제네 샤 둔자 둔바 데그레스. 샤브지 제고 말바. 대천지도 네 녀비 지원에 베테냐베 대표지도 만내서스. 중고마 간에 저 들레지와 마시베 들레지와 봐도 들레 처리와 되었네 머리소스. 지금 말해서
Okay, so this, I'm sorry, just this paragraph has to split up 12 and 13. So 12, with regards to lifespan, if a being of the intermediate state has not found the conditions for rebirth or remain for any length of time up to 7 days, once it has found such conditions, its lifespan is not definitely 7 days. If it does not find the conditions for rebirth within 7 days, it assumes another body within the intermediate state. Period. So that's 12. And then 13, it may stay in the intermediate state from 1 to 7 weeks. However, it is certain, as it certainly will have found the conditions for rebirth within that time, it stays no longer than that. Since the texts that are reliable sources do not describe a longer lifespan than this, the claim that a being of the intermediate state may stay longer is incorrect. So here it's stating that it will be a certain amount of days, 7 days, 7 weeks, and then the second is that second point is that it won't stay longer than that. So that's how it's divided into 12 and 13.
다 주지바 데레샤 주지바.
Lai.
주지바. 바두 젠지 바시도 주수네사. 바두 젠지 바시도 주수사. 바두 대야 바두 젠다 로면로하. 바두 젠지 바시도 주수네사. 라이 바두 샤 듄지 바 십분에 라이 바두 당하사. 라이 바두데 샤 듄툴 십분에 야자 라이 바두 바두를 제바 요아레스. 야나 말라수비 바두를 제바 요아레스. 말라수비 바두 로데사. 레지 샤완 조유 바두 사변 조아 시비시로사.
And number 14 is the last paragraph. A being of the intermediate state that is to be reborn as a deity, for instance, may die after 7 days and either again reach the intermediate state of a deity or else reach the intermediate state of a human or some other form. This is possible because a change in its karma can transform the seeds for its intermediate state. The same holds for other beings of the intermediate state as well. So that completes the 14 categories of the Jayan Sheva's outline. So slowly, we'll another time in the future go through it again.
나바 제수 예상 주수들 야제베 사제 고디는 거고 고디 차소나 가자 등에도 군주권의 선거 찬다 열라 조직을 했는 것도 다들 다른 셰도 말에
So Those are the 14 points of Jayan Sheba's outline, and now next time we'll get into number 5, how you then take rebirth. Jayan Sheba states that there are 9 categories of how you take rebirth, and once we get through those 9, then we are in the section on the 12 links of the dependent origination. Dixon. Thank you very much, and we'll end there. We'll do the so we'll go through it slowly. In the future, we'll go over it again. So we'll do the concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I've collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losang Drapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well, with whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the 3 times. I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. All-powerful Avalokiteshvara Tenzin Gyatso, may stay until samsara's end. I pray for the long life of the precious Khensur Wandak, upholder of scriptural and realizational doctrines, spiritual friend who trained extensively in the 5 great philosophical texts with exceptional wisdom and perseverance. Tu jiram Jeguti Shapi